going to give you the hard truth about softeners.
Okay.
You
Doesn't matter.
cannot soften water without salt.
Okay.
And there's a lot of salt-free softeners out there. They're not softeners.
Gotcha.
They're what's called a TAC system, which is template assisted crystallization. That's what TAC stands for. And what that does is it takes the hardness and it binds it so that it doesn't stick to things as well, which
Okay.
might be okay for car washes. However, they're very, very unpredictable whether they actually work.
All right. So I got an interesting email a couple weeks back, and in the tagline it said, "Can your listeners handle the truth about water?" And it really made me kind of perk up and think about it for a minute, because on this podcast and most detailing podcasts that I've ever been involved with or know people of or whatever, we always talk about, the best compounds, the best polishes, the best pads, the best machines, yada, yada, yada. But we never talk about the key ingredient to everything. I mean, it's not only the key ingredient of life, but it's the one thing that makes our products. It's the one thing that we need to do the jobs is water. So I immediately sent an email back and was like, let's do this. So I've got Cydian Kauffman from Pure Water Northwest to explain maybe why we can't handle the truth, and then we can dive into some tips and tricks about water and everything. So how are you doing, sir?
I'm great.
That's good,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
I get
Thanks for having me on, Alex.
no. I'm being honest. Like it really, I get emails every now and then from people that are like, oh, my person can help you this, my person can help you that. Come on. And a lot of times it's like, I don't know how it would fit into a detailing podcast, but I mean, water is what makes the detail world go round. So I definitely wanted to get you on. So I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's start exactly with what exactly is Pure Water Northwest. What do you guys do? What do you guys make? All that, whatever.
I mean, my answer to that's a little bit nerdy.
Okay.
We
let's
do
let's nerd out. I mean, we got some nerds that listen to this podcast.
we do water science, so we like to be as accurate, and we try and set ourselves up so we're less selling products and more selling solutions. Because if you're in the water industry and you focus on products, then your next step after that is to do less testing, because as soon as you do testing, you're going to find out that your product does not perfectly fit the water.
Right.
So what we do that at Pure Water Northwest is we focus on testing first. And the instant we test, that suddenly makes our job way more difficult, because then we're like, oh, you have like 50 parts per million of chlorides in your water. Wow, we really actually have to do something different than just a standard softener if you want to get your stuff spot free, or
Okay.
high sodium level. If we do a softener, you're going to get the same amount of spots that you had before on your glass or surfaces. It's going to be easier to get off, but it's going to look no different on the finished product. So and that's if we're going for detailing. Obviously, we also do stuff that's related to drinking water, but that's a whole other can of worms, because
Right.
there's a lot of crazy stuff about drinking water.
So would you, when you say you, like, you do the testing, and please forgive me for being super naive about this, but like when you say like testing it and looking at the different things, like my mind immediately went to like when I take a pool sample down to pinch a penny and they go through and they go like, oh, you don't have enough salt, you don't have enough chlorine, you got too much this, or, that. So is it something
Yeah.
kind of similar?
Yeah, it's
Really?
kinda
Okay.
similar to that. Exactly. You're doing that's called titration testing, what they do, and, it's basically that. It's dropping little drops of something in the water, and then you drop other drops in, and if it changes a certain
Yeah.
color, you compare the color on a color wheel, and you get a result. I mean, that's most of that testing. Obviously, there's, like, arsenic testing, which requires, like, boiling water and then taking the stuff that boils out into a different oil solution, stuff like that. So, but we're not talking about
Oh
that.
wow.
So yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. So on the detail side of it, give us some detail science because, detailers and myself included, if we're doing it right, we're getting like a CR spotless system or something similar to it. And I have a client of mine who does like some water stuff, and he was telling me realistically what you should do is actually have a softener first before it goes into like your CR spotless DI type system, because then what happens is it knocks down a lot of the hardness so that the spotless system then doesn't work as hard, can last you a little bit
Yeah.
longer, things like that. Is so he knew what he was talking
Well,
about there?
yeah,
Okay.
but if you test first, then you know how much that matters. So if you're in
Right.
Seattle, for example, they've already got their water's like 2 grains per gallon of hardness on average. I
Okay.
don't you probably don't know Seattle very well, but I mean, if you go
No.
like
I I was there for like a day.
okay. So
Yeah.
it depends on where you are basically. And chlorine byproducts also matter, sometimes, but only when it's in extremely high levels. So,
Okay.
let's just stick to hardness for a moment though. Hardness is basically like minerals, it's rock, right? Calcium, magnesium, and then if it's allowed to dry on a surface, it's like rock stuck to that surface because it was in
Right.
a soluble form, and then it comes out the water comes off of it from evaporation, and then it's left there. And if you looked at it with a microscope, it would look like little mountains on the surface of your
Okay.
vehicle, or even on your leather or whatever it is that it's on. It would be, and
Okay.
whether you can visually see it or not, and frequently you can visually see it, it is there, and it has an effect. Anytime that surface gets wet again, it has an effect on the pH level of whatever that is. The water will actually have an alteration to the hydrogen ions, which lowers the pH, increases the acidity level. um, leather wants lower pH to be healthier, right?
Right.
Which you probably
Yeah.
know. And if you're getting super alkaline water because you're putting in a lot of you're not softening, you're putting a lot of anion resin in, or you're doing something else that makes your water more alkaline, like for drinking, that may not be as good for cleaning. So and it's not that it's that bad, but you gotta ask yourself, "Am I using this only for detailing and washing, or am I taking a mixed use system, and then do I need to do anything to the water after that to make it perfect or ideal for washing?" Um, those CR spotless systems, they're DI systems, they're great. DI is amazing for finishing a car to have it streak free, but you don't
Right.
need to use that the entire time you're washing either, which you probably know, I don't know. Actually, I'm kinda curious, is that what the standard is?
Well, so I mean, I would say most guys probably do just go ahead and, use it for everything, cuz like here in Florida, a lot of people that I know, a lot of detailers that I know don't necessarily have like a wash bay in their
Mm,
shop. So we're washing outside. So even in like the pre-rinse, the soap, all that stuff, a lot of times, unless you're doing it early morning or later afternoon, evening time, where maybe, the sun's not up as high or, whatever, it's a little bit easier to kind of get away with that. But
that makes sense.
if you're doing 9:30, 10 o'clock, and the sun's already up beating on the car, you're kind of fighting that, to keep it wet, to not spot even with. So I do know a lot of guys will just run the system for the whole thing. I do know that there are some guys that will usually, especially with something like the CR spotless, they'll do like the bypass valve. So like what you're saying, they can turn off the spotless system, do their initial rinse, their soaping and all that stuff, and then turn it on for their final rinse to make sure that they get that streak free, spot free kind of
Yeah.
look.
And that kind of idea, I would say, I mean, just this is where we have to mix our experience here, right? But
Right,
I would say the ideal system would be a softener because softeners are so inexpensive to upkeep, right?
right,
And that softener is going to have a little bit of salt in it, but the softener doing the majority of the work, and that alone will take away a lot of the spotting. That will leave behind just a little bit of salts, a little bit of the chlorides. In Florida, probably not much silica. Over here, there would be some silica, things
right,
like that. And then the final rinse through that DI system, the deionized water is fantastic as a final rinse, and then you are saving the life of that DI. It's passing through the softener, like you mentioned, anyhow, and then you take the bypass off, so it's still passing through the softener. The water that was used before was the softened water, and now your DI water is
yeah.
passing through the softener, and then it goes into the DI. And then you spray down the car with that. That's an ideal scenario, and you're replacing those DI cartridges a lot less.
Right, right. Yeah, that's what the guy told me when he was kind of explaining the system to me, and I'm still waiting to hear back from him if because I told him I would do a trade out. I was like, dude, if you want to do a trade out, like, hook me up. I'll do some cars for you. So I'm still waiting to hear back from him
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, where are you in Florida?
So I'm in Sanford, which is just north of
Okay.
Orlando. So I'm in the Central Florida
I'm gonna
area.
look where up that
So
is. I know a good water
yeah.
treatment company down there, so
Oh, okay.
I'm just seeing, like, where you are relative to, like, I don't know, where you're probably really far away from this. Where's Clearwater compared to, yeah, it's like, way far away.
Yeah, yeah, Clearwater, yeah, Clearwater's over on the
Yeah,
West Coast. That's
super far
that's
away, okay.
Tampa. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that's a couple hours
Florida,
away.
though, yeah, there's so many water treatment companies in Florida because the water is so hard there. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so let me ask you, so the little TDS meters that you can
Mhm.
buy on Amazon and everything like that, those are pretty accurate, or I
Not
mean,
always.
you know, not
How
always?
important's your TDS to you to know? Um, I definitely use like I use my TDS meter cost me $550.
Oh, wow.
It
Okay.
does TDS pH conductivity, and that's all it does, and it's a really sensitive meter. Um, and I need to do that because sometimes I run into a well that has, like, saltwater intrusion or something, so you're gonna get like 5,000 TDS in weird situations.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
which you obviously would never wanna touch that with a car.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
yeah.
you guys, I think ideally you look for it being, under 20, ideally closer to under 10 for your situations, right?
Y Yeah, that's what, a couple of the water guys have told me is 0 to 10, perfect, 11 to 20, you're still good, but, and then once you get over 21, then you're kinda I mean, I don't know, I mean, I feel like 21 to 30 is probably still not that
Yeah.
bad, but, when I meter the water coming out of the spigot at the shop, and it's like, I think it was like, I metered it last week. It was like 207 parts per million, which realistically, like looking at the thing on the back of the TDS is adequate drinking water.
Yeah,
I mean,
drinking
like,
water, yeah.
sure, growing up in the 80s, like I drank plenty of that, like,
Yeah, TDS is just a mixture of, like, a dozen different things, and
right.
so you can't tell just from looking at TDS whether it's safe to drink, just so you just so
Okay.
you know. The TDS
Well,
alone
I mean,
doesn't tell you, but
I'm
yeah.
not an I mean, I'm an '80s kid, but I'm not
Yeah,
still in the '80s, so I don't drink out of hoses anymore. I'm old enough now I can buy bottled
yeah.
water.
Well, I don't know if I do that anymore either. The there's
Oh,
some
really?
there's a lot of microplastics in bottled water.
Oh, yeah, that's right, I did
Yeah,
hear about that,
and
yeah.
it's real. That's
Did that on
like
Rogan.
uh, and microplastics are it's really funny that bottled water is used for this because bottled water better have some chlorine in it because microplastics are a perfect surface area for bacteria actually. So
Oh, wow.
it's interesting. Yeah, put
Wow.
storing stuff
So
in
screw it.
plastic.
Yeah, I'm just gonna pitch all the water bottles in my fridge now and go back to, like, Coke or
Yeah,
something like that. Because
aluminum.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's
that has its own issues, but maybe not as
yeah,
bad. Um,
right.
the, so can I ask about detailing a little bit? I'm kinda
Sure.
curious about, is it known that city water alone, just because it's called city water, can't just be trusted not to leave, like, iron stains or, like, manganese stains? Do people
Yeah, I
know
mean,
that?
I would hope that most detailers would kind of
Okay.
understand that. I was actually at a buddy of mine, at his shop one day because he had the Culligan
Yeah,
guy come because he was looking into a Culligan, like, water softener system or DI
yeah,
system, and, so the guy probably did a little bit more of like what you're talking about where he tested the water because he was talking about like how high the levels of chlorine were and sulfur. Like he actually like almost had that pool company like kit
right.
where he was like, doing the droppers and all
Yeah,
that stuff.
we do that, yeah.
To be able to yeah, to be able to figure it out and everything. So that's where, realistically, I kind of learned a little bit of that. I mean, obviously you always hear on the news, it's, the city water or whatever has this or has that. I'm a little different. I mean, granted, my shop is city water, but then here at our house we have well water.
Yeah,
So, we have an actual water softener system for the house, that'll take like 4 bags of 40-pound salt, to fill the container, and then, usually lasts us a couple of months or so. Because otherwise, when we first built the house, it was the water smelled, and we would take a shower and stink like rotten eggs, and it definitely had hard water because you get out of the shower and you just feel icky.
yeah.
So yeah, we definitely had to invest in a water softener here at
Well,
the house
the
too.
softener alone shouldn't have helped that rotten egg smell. What did you do?
I mean, it did. We don't really get that smell anymore.
How long's it been in?
With Oh, good lord, man, we've had that thing. Let's see, we built the house in 2003, and I want to say we probably put that in. I wanna say, like, a couple of years after being
Okay,
here, so, I mean, it's
long
been
time.
it's been in there probably 15, 16 years. Yeah, we just had the guys out servicing it because something happened, it stopped working,
Yeah,
so they had to come out and put a new little, like, pump motor in, or the little thing that goes back and forth that kind of, I guess, makes things
yeah, yeah,
work or whatever. It's almost like a piston that just
yeah,
goes in and out. They had to
the
replace
valve.
that and, like, something else. Yeah, and he told us, he's like, "Ah, you probably can get another couple of years out of it, and it's probably gonna be time to replace it." So,
Yeah,
you know.
but they must have put in, well, that we'll see. We'll see whether or not the, rotten egg smell comes back because back that 15, 16 years ago, they might have put in like a green sand system or something that
Okay.
plays kind of double duty, can pull out a little bit of the smells and isn't quite as effective with the hardness, but does a good enough job. These days, they
Gotcha.
usually do completely separate systems for the hardness because then you can get it all gone, and then the smell, which is like air injecting carbon, um,
Oh,
unless the
okay.
cause of the smell is because of some like iron bacteria, and then you have to oxidize with chlorine instead. But,
Okay.
yeah, so but that's awesome that you got that what you got back then worked
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, yeah. And I've never like totally opened it. I mean, we could take the top out of off the one and it's got like the little computer and like the motor in it, but I mean, there's two kind of pieces to it, and they both probably stand about, I don't know, I'd say 3.5 feet tall. So the one, like I said, you pull the top off of it, it's got the motor in it, with like the little computer board. And then the other one, you pull the top off it, and that's where you put all the salt into it. So I don't know if there's something in the bottom of the other one that maybe helps
Yeah.
with the smell or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, that could be, yeah.
yeah, but
Cool.
yeah, yeah. So I don't know, but yeah. So like, I don't. I would like to think that detailers would know that, but hopefully, if not, they're listening to this and they're hearing
Yeah,
you,
well
kind of explain what all could be in their city water, safe to drink city water
oh, yeah.
that's not safe to drink
Well, I
probably.
mean, any water, whether it's city water or well water, can have, like, really crazy stuff in it, like arsenic or uranium or any of that stuff, and you never
Yeah.
know unless you test for it. City, though, they have a li wells don't you can do whatever you want, right? You can
Right.
drink 100 parts per million of arsenic and, like, if you die, you die. But, um,
Right.
city water, that is they have limits set by the EPA of what they're allowed through, but the crazy thing is that they have 2 limits. One's called the MCL, maximum contaminant level, one's called the MCLG, maximum contaminant level goal, and the goal is the
Okay.
health guideline. So, like, when you look at the the EPA website, it'll say the MCL for arsenic is 0.01. The health guideline for arsenic, meaning the legal level, the health guideline for arsenic is 0, meaning you can have
Right.
arsenic at, like, 0.009 and you're good legally, but
Right.
health-wise, no good, according to the
Yeah.
EPA. So, yeah, I mean, even city water, it's a good idea to test. You can have iron at just about any level in city water, and it's legal. And because they're putting chlorine in, it can come out colored. So usually like orange color. So usually they will do something like put in carbon in order to get rid of some of that iron, but still some can
Okay.
pass through. And then
Right.
that what that'll do is uh uh it will be on the surface and you won't see it. And then once it oxidizes through drying, suddenly it'll be orange.
Right. And every detailer
Okay,
knows
good.
that. Yeah, you get that. Well, I mean, I don't know that they know that it turned, all of that, but we all know, we've seen the cars, the client brings it to us, like, oh, my sprinkler hits on this one side, and
Yeah.
and it's all like yellowy orange or whatever, and it needs to be, compounded, polished out to remove it because it can't just
Yeah.
wash off. And and you can't just throw wax on it to remove it. You actually have to clean it off. You have to use something with an abrasive or
Yeah.
whatever. So yeah, I mean, we all, I feel, kind of know that. I mean, it's either that or you get the one side of the car that's just annihilated with hard water
Yeah.
spots, where you could tell that they parked at the edge of the driveway or next to the
Yeah.
median curbing or whatever in the apartment complex, and the sprinklers come on at night, and then the car is obliterated with hard water
Exactly, yeah.
spots. So yeah.
So, here's another question I'm curious about. When it comes
Okay.
to leather, do you guys
Uh-huh.
care a lot about chlorine in the water? Because I would think you would,
So
but
Yeah, so I would say this. I mean, for myself and probably a majority of the detailers in the industry, um, at least if they're knowledgeable enough, if we're dealing with leather, it's your typical leather inside
Right.
the
Yeah.
car, right? Occasionally, maybe a motorcycle or something like that or whatever. But we are primarily using leather dedicated cleaners and conditioners. So we're not using a water to like
Mm,
mix something or dilute
that
something
makes sense.
down. Yeah, you're typically going to use, and there's and I'll give them a shout out because I kind of enjoy all the brands. There's a few main brands that are leather dedicated in the detailing industry. It's Color Lock, it's Geist, it's the Leather Repair Company, and it's Leather Reek, and they all make leather dedicated cleaners that are more
Yeah.
foaming. So when you put it on, it foams up. So that way you're not getting a run line that
Mm,
if it's got too much of a harsh cleaner in it, it's not going to stain the
that's good.
leather. And that's kind of the problem with some of the guys who are using like an APC or a degreaser that they're going to mix with water to dilute down, and then they're just spraying it on the seat, and or on the door panel, and then you get a run. And if it's, too got too much in it, it's gonna burn or kind of discolor the leather, because it's just burning the dye that's in the leather. So but yeah, I would say, at least I would like to say, I'll never, you don't never want to assume,
Yeah,
but majority of detailers, if they really know and their experience, they are using a dedicated leather cleaner of some
that makes
sort.
sense.
So it's not
Yeah,
mixed with
that
the
makes
water or
sense
anything.
because chlorine would actually potentially affect the oils in the leather, but if you're doing a dedicated cleaner, then they'd be hitting that 4 pH-ish, something like that that leather
Yeah,
likes, right? And they'd be doing
yeah,
they'd be having a mild, thing to remove oils, they'd be making sure it's left somewhat moist, things like that, right? Like, that's what the cleaners are doing,
yeah. I mean,
basically.
typically, like I said, usually they're like a
Yeah.
foaming kind of cleaner. Use a soft like horsehair brush, or something along that
Yeah.
line.
Okay, cool.
To agitate the dirt or the grime off of the top of the surface, so dry it out too much. And then typically you're putting some sort of follow-up conditioner protectant on it that's then going to, absorb back into the leather and moisten it and keep it from drying out. And then depending on, I use one that actually has a UV inhibitor kind of protectant over it as well. So not
Mm,
only is it conditioning it, but it's also protecting it against UV to keep the leather from drying out and cracking as well. This podcast is sponsored by Detailed Image. What sets Detailed Image apart? Their outstanding customer service and fast shipping on 3,000 detailing products from almost 100 brands, plus their extensive product descriptions, detailing blog, and how to guides make it easy to choose the right products for any job. And here's the best part: listeners of the Detail Solutions podcast get an exclusive 15% off with the promo code DSP15. That's DSP15 for 15% off your order. Another option for the pros listening is their incredible wholesale program that saves you on average of 15 to 30% off. In 2024, wholesalers saved on average of $699. There are no fees, no commitments, and no subscriptions, just huge savings. Join today at detailedimage.com/wholesale/DSP, and you'll get a bonus $20 credit when you make your first purchase. Again, for the wholesalers, that's detailedimage.com/wholesale/DSP and get an extra $20 credit.
that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. So
That's good.
yeah, so
Yeah.
that's typically how we deal with leather. I mean, I've got a buddy of mine who, the past couple of years, took a deep dive into leather. He started doing leather work, just as something to kind of like pass the time and be a hobby. And then the more he got into it, the more he started learning about like the different cuts of leather and like the different, um, how the different cleaners work and the conditioners and all this. And he gave me a deep dive one time when he was first getting into it, and I was just like, "Bro, you lost me like 10 minutes ago." Like you're talking crazy stuff, but yeah. So usually when it comes to anything leather, like he's my guy. I reach out to, and I'm like, "Hey, I got this. What do I do?" Just because he spent the last couple of years doing the deep dive in leather.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah, it's nuts. He actually he was working for Color Lock. I'm not sure if Brian's still with Color Lock, but he was working for Color Lock, and he was actually with Color Lock doing a lot of work up at the Mercedes Benz and BMW plants, like up in North Carolina, like
Uh-huh.
going in there and teaching their guys like how to recondition the leather if they, scratch something or tear something in the assembly line without having to, redo the whole seat and whatnot. So yeah, it's pretty cool. He had a good little experience with that.
Well, that's neat. You're already doing great.
Yeah, I
The
mean,
the last thing I might be able to add to this, though, would be for people who are like in my neck of the wood, the Northwest, or
yeah.
Arizona, Nevada, or Hawaii, Utah, California, people
Well,
who might have.
let's talk Hawaii. Let's
Okay.
talk Hawaii because I know a bunch of detailers in Hawaii, and their biggest thing is the hard water spots, right?
Yeah.
Um, so they're constantly combating that. So, what's their maybe solution, or what is their things that they can look into that kind of, helps with that?
Well, okay. This is where it gets kind of weird. So, s- hard water is very easy to handle if it's hard water. Now,
Uh-huh.
we're calling hard, just making sure we understand. I can take all the hardness out of a house, right?
Okay.
No problem. And you can still have all the same amount of spots you had before
Okay.
because the spots are coming from something else.
Gotcha.
So, like, one of the craziest things that you're going to see in the Northwest, Arizona, California, Hawaii, places with volcanoes, for
Yeah.
example,
Yeah.
is silica.
Okay.
And silica is crazy. Silica is like insanely hard to get rid of. In fact, it plagues dentist offices all the time when they got to get that water down to that really, really etch free finish. It has
Okay.
no etching. And if they have silica, they've gotta do some pretty unique stuff to get rid of it. RO does not always get rid of silica, right? RO will sometimes catch silica, but in some forms, silica will blast right through an RO.
Oh, wow.
DI does not necessarily get rid of silica. Um, there are, uh, basically a few ways to get rid of silica, but the problem is how many forms of silica there are, right? So there's ionic silica, and that is charged, so it can be removed by DI. There's colloidal, there's non-ionic silica. It just it would be like breeze past it. DI would be like, I don't even know you're there. I have no awareness that you exist at all.
Oh, wow.
And that's the kind of stuff that can also get through an RO in some cases.
Okay.
So if you're doing, and the softener won't touch it either. So in some places, people are doing everything they can to get rid of hard water spots, and they're doing all the right things. Everything you've already mentioned is all the right stuff.
Right.
Softener and then DI finish. DI is so expensive, you don't want to necessarily do everything with DI. If you can afford it, then great. Um, but silica could even be get past that, and that could still be why you have, like, remaining problems with, like, spotting still existing even after
Okay.
doing all that.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because water spotting is obviously a huge topic in this industry, and water spot removers are always kind of seems like hit or miss. I kind of have my thoughts on why or whatever, but most water spot removers are just an acidic and more water, right? Watered down,
Yeah.
because you're essentially attacking the acidicness of whatever's in the water spot with an acid, to kind of neutralize out. In your, in your experience, is there something that is different or better that it could remove water spots that you're not, spraying an acid or watered down acid, or just, putting a heavy compound and a heavy pad on and just cutting the living daylights out of the paint to cut that water spot out?
Yeah, so that gets into this other weird thing that we kinda just touched on. Um, Water spots can be anything, right?
Yeah,
So if they're mineral deposits, then, you're doing that acid-based stuff, right?
right,
Like vinegar, sulfuric acid, citric acid, that kind of stuff. But that can dull finishes if you're washing with it too hard. You have to use, stuff specialized for your industry, of course.
right,
Um, so the problem with silica is it can literally etch. Like it can etch glass, it can etch metals, it can actually, if you're rubbing too much silica in, you can suddenly see a polished surface. If it's a lot of silica now, if it's a
right.
little bit, you won't notice, but if it's a lot, you can see a polished surface suddenly go dull.
Okay.
And then, sun can like bake it into the surface
Right,
in a way, creating kind of a surface damage. So, if it's like acid rain or soap scum, all that, you guys know how to get rid of that stuff already.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
that's easy. But for like that stuff that's like etched silica, that is that is rough because
right,
you have to get specialty cleaners for that. Um, it's I mean, and I don't actually know them off the top of my head because this is not that common a problem for me to actually need to know about cleaning,
right.
but I do know that that matters. I was gonna actually ask you about, do you guys ever use, like, clay bars for
Yeah,
cleaning?
yeah.
Yeah. What do you use that for?
So the clay bars, or like the clay towels or the clay mitts that they've kind of, the synthetics that they've come up with in the recent years.
Yep.
So what that does is almost like a very minimal water, like wet sanding. So
Mhm.
that's more for removing contaminants off of the surface that typically wouldn't see. So usually like your rail dust, your overspray,
Mm.
any kind of, um, like, I like to usually kind of refer to it as like fallout. So just any industrial type fallout. Like if you travel a lot on interstates or highways where there's, tractor trailers and things like that. Somebody explained it really good one time, is, you know on interstates or railways or anything like that, there's always going to be some kind of carbon dusting, or brake dusting, things like that. And all that stuff goes up in the air, and what goes up must come down, and when it does, and it kind of like lands and then penetrates into the surface of the paint on a micro level. So
Oh, got it.
you need to use, a clay bar or a clay pad or towel or whatever, anybody's using. And because then what that does is it'll remove it off of the surface. The analogy I came up with years ago to kind of explain it to clients is because we do clay barring, and then there's also iron removers. uh,
Right, yeah.
so the analogy I use is clay bar is kind of like shaving your face, right? Or your legs if you're a girl, whatever. You're just taking it off of the surface. When you use an iron remover that you're spraying onto the paint, it's attacking the pores of the paint to open up and allow that iron to actually come out. So then it's kind of like if you were to do like a waxing. You're ripping it out by the root. So a lot of times when we're doing paint corrections and things of that nature, not only are you going to clay it, but you're going to use an iron, because then you're fully cleaning the paint before you get into your correction work. So, if you were just to clay it and you're just kind of shaving that piece off of the surface, and then you do your correction, you put your wax on it, your ceramic coating, your sealant, whatever. Now you're just putting that layer on top of that contamination that's still in the paint technically, and could eventually work its way out. And then you get a rough surface again, kind of thing.
Okay.
So yeah, that's how that works. So let me ask you this. Is there a way to, like, looking at water spots to kind of determine what is, a silica spot that, you just kind of maybe are screwed, or
No, yeah, I'll
okay.
show you, let me see if I can share an image with you if
Yeah,
that's
you
not
should be able to do a shared screen. There's like a little icon with a computer with an arrow in it
all right.
on your screen. If you click
Yep,
that,
I see
it'll,
it.
yep.
Let me
And
get the
then,
image up. Sorry
yeah, no,
for
no,
the listeners who are listening.
it's, yeah. Well, you know what? That'll make them just have to go and flip over to the YouTube and watch the video now,
Exactly.
so they'll watch it twice or listen to it twice.
Yeah, so let me see if I can get
Okay.
this shared. Where is this? Okay. Yeah, I see it now. Okay. So, can you see
Okay.
this?
Hang on. There we go. Okay. Yep. I see that.
Okay. So, this here on the left is 10 hardness, 420 TDS water that was left to dry. On
Okay.
the right, this has been softened down to about 300 TDS water,
Okay.
but it is totally soft, zero hardness, absolutely no hardness whatsoever.
Okay.
Can you tell the difference? When I zoom in super far,
Yeah.
I can kind of see that this edge comes out a little further on
Yeah.
this, you
Yeah.
see?
Yeah, I can
And
see
this,
that,
but
where
there's
that one's a little bit thinner. Yeah.
they're still both
Yeah.
causing
Yeah.
spotting,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. I gotcha.
So, like, yeah, I guess that's that's what I mean. Like, as long you got to know what your spotting's from by testing,
Right.
and it's kind of hard because testing
Well,
for silica is like really
yeah.
difficult.
Well,
But
not only that, but like once a car comes to a detailer, like there's no way for us to test the
no,
water.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, so like that's that. Well, so we talked about doing the softener before the DI.
hmm
For detailers out there that are looking to, you know, get into a system, or maybe they need to change their system out, because that's where I'm at right now. I'm trying to change my system out. Trying to get a new system. So right now I'm doing all my washing in the morning before the sun comes up in the morning, so I don't worry about water spotting. But for the detailers that don't have, an arm and a leg to spend on something like that, I know the CR spotless are probably the most economy. They're usually in like that $450 range. But what
yeah.
would you suggest as far as, like, to add a softener onto it, or is there another system out there that maybe is the same as CR spotless, maybe a little bit better, a little bit more affordable? What do you recommend?
I'm gonna give you the hard truth about softeners.
Okay,
You
doesn't matter.
cannot soften water without salt,
Okay,
and there's a lot of salt-free softeners out there. They're not softeners.
gotcha.
They're what's called a tack system, which is template assisted crystallization. That's what tack stands for. And what that does is it takes the hardness and it binds it so that it doesn't stick to things as well, which
Okay,
might be okay for car washes. However, they're very, very unpredictable whether they actually work.
gotcha.
So if you buy a tack system and it works, you're good. And then you don't have to worry about salt. You just replace the media after 10 years.
Right.
However, in a lot of cases, those tax systems won't work. You will have just wasted your money. and then you will have to spend money on a softener. All a softener is, don't get too complex about it. It's just cation resin. It's CAT ion resin. That's it.
Okay.
Now it's how it's put into the system with a bed of gravel at the bottom and a valve at the top to manage the water. That is a little bit more complex. And then the other thing that matters a lot is the water usage. So if you are just running through water because you're doing wash after wash after wash, you're going to be dumping bags of salt into that system
Right.
because the salt is used to clean regenerate the media. And if you don't want to be doing that constantly, you need a bigger size system so you have a higher capacity.
Gotcha.
So the tricky stuff is not what kind of softener. There's only so many grades of media. You can search online. You can go down to your local hardware store and get a really cheap softener. Will it work? Yes. Will it work long term? That really depends on how much detailing you're doing with that softener.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So if you want it dialed in, you need to talk to someone like us, and we can help dial it in for you, the exact thing you want, get you something that will last. But yeah, if you're on a budget, I would definitely start with the least expensive softener you can get. Just make it work till you get some more
Right.
money, and then I would dial it in and get something that is more efficient.
And if I'm not wrong with water softeners that you're using the salt, you have to have some way to drain it, right? Because those
Yep.
need to like drain out every day, couple of days or something like
Yep.
that, I believe, depending on how much you use it. So even if it's something you put in your shop, you have to be able to have a way to run a drain line or something out and
Yeah.
to spell that. Yeah, because I know ours kicks on every night at like 2:30 in the morning, and
Yeah.
sometimes it wakes me up, sometimes it doesn't. So,
Yours is regenerating daily? Wow.
I think it might be every other day. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I just know sometimes I sleep through it, and sometimes at 2:30 is, usually when the old bladder's like knocking on, like, "Hey, we need to go pee real quick," and I lay back in bed and I hear the thing just, pouring out the water and everything
Yeah.
like that. Um, so yeah, yeah, like I said, I don't know if it does it every night, but I know it does most nights. So yeah. Okay. Well, it's all interesting. I mean, uh yeah, like I said, I mean, we talk on this on my podcast. I mean, I've been doing this 5 years now. I think I'm like 390 episodes in or something
Wow.
like that. And this is the first time I've ever talked about water. So, you know, like,
Yeah.
and I don't know anybody else that's talked about water, other than maybe if they were just doing like a review on a DI system or something like
Y
that.
You
So
know what's funny, man?
interesting.
No one wants to talk about water. I'm
Yeah.
in this industry, and other than people in this industry who talk about water all the time, all of our customers, when they're calling us, they're like, "I don't even I don't even wanna look at this. My water's supposed to be fine, but for some reason I'm having all this trouble. So fine, go
Right.
ahead and check it out for me." It's like they're almost angry at us, and we're just here to help you. You're
Right.
the one who never looked at whether or not your water has stuff in it. And that's the thing. People want to just drink their water and assume it's good, but you gotta test. You just have to actually look.
Yeah.
That's what we say, especially when it's about drinking water. You don't wanna be drinking arsenic.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now you got me thinking. I need to go get a tester and test all my waters now.
Well, it's easy. There's, like, these syndicated labs online that like, $200 would be the only test you need for your well. It's 200
Oh, okay.
bucks. It tests for 50 different things. Send it to me. I will analyze it for you for free. Just ask, I'll tell you what you need to know.
Right, right. No,
So
that's good. That's good.
It's,
That's good.
yeah, it's easy. Just go to, like, I think it's called tapscore.com. Get the
Okay.
well test
Okay.
for 200 bucks.
S
Um, yeah.
No,
And
I was
while we're on specific suggestions,
yeah.
the people who have silica out there, if you're worried that you have silica, you should get a little thing from Resin Tech of ASM 125 and run your water through that just as a test to see if it makes any difference.
Okay.
That is the name of the stuff that is. Silica is very difficult. It requires very specialized stuff. So that's what it's called.
Oh, I'm just,
That's it. I just had
yeah,
to say
yeah,
that in case anyone out there's going, he didn't say anything about what to do about silica.
yeah. No, no, no. Yeah, yeah. Just close your business down and go into a different industry and not worry about it. Yeah. So so um so for Pure Water Northwest, do you guys offer solutions like or
Yeah.
systems or something like that? So if somebody's listening to this podcast and maybe wants to reach out to you and maybe get pick your brain a little bit more or ask you about systems and everything like that, is that something they'd be able to do? And if so, like how do they get a hold of you guys?
Just go to purewaternorthwest.com. The number's right on the website. There's also a chat feature there, and you can if you follow enough steps after that number, you can call me directly. It's pretty easy. You'll
Nice.
you'll call one of our people and you'll say, I want to talk to Cydian. And they will say, okay, we'll get it set up for you.
Yeah, and then
That
you're gonna be like, "Damn, going on that podcast, and all these
I
detailers
know.
are calling me."
Now everyone keeps calling me.
Yeah,
And well, maybe somebody will be in my area and needs help. And I can technically help people anywhere. I would just
okay.
need to send them the equipment.
Right,
But
right, I
I would
gotcha.
imagine if someone wants my help, they're probably going to be in my area.
Yeah, and we do have listeners in the Pacific Northwest area, especially Seattle.
Cool.
Kimball, I'm looking at you, um, 'cause I know he still listens to this. Well, listen, Sidian, I appreciate you taking the time, let alone reaching out. I mean, the
Yeah.
fact that you even like happen to stumble across one of the podcast episodes to even listen to it to reach out is pretty awesome because there's a lot of times I'm like, well, this is such a niche podcast for a niche industry, and I mean, I know there's a lot of DIYers out there and everything that would possibly stumble across it, but yeah, sometimes I'm a little surprised when I get some emails from people that are like, "Hey, listen to this episode, thinking about could we come on and whatever." I mean,
Yeah.
I just had a guy a month or so ago. He's from Australia and he does marketing. He teaches how to do, like, one of his
Huh.
biggest thing is like vacation sales.
Oh.
So like he has a system where like you can buy vacations for super cheap, and then you run promotions where you give away a 5-night stay at, like,
Huh.
Las Vegas or Orlando or wherever, and it's only costs like maybe $90 to buy the vacation, and then you're giving it away on a service that you're selling for a few $100s or something like
Hmm,
that. So that was a neat one too. So
that's
that was
neat.
yeah, that was interesting because not something that I would normally do. This one, like I said, was not something that I normally would have thought of, but it was very interesting. So thank you for reaching out and thank you for
Yeah.
coming on and taking the time to do this. And hey,
Yeah.
if anybody wants to figure out about their water, just go ahead and call City and reach out to them.
I appreciate it, Alex. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem, sir.
Yeah.
Well, listen, you have a great night, and
You too.
we'll talk soon because I'll reach out.
All
Yeah,
right.
take care.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Hey, don't check out yet.